And welcome back to Racing Rundown on YouTube. This is going to be one of the last YouTube content things that we're going to have for the year 2022. Just looking at this as we are recording this on the 21st of December. And I should correct myself, actually, this is the 22nd, whatever. We will have a couple of previews for the December 26 stakes, or at least one preview for the December 26 stakes at Santa Anita. That will be for the Malibu, maybe one more, but that just depends on what we're able to do. And then obviously this video, maybe something else before the end of the year. But right now, this is going to be our first Kentucky Derby Power 5 of the 2023 Road to the Kentucky Derby. Last weekend was the final preps for the 2-year-old horses on the Derby Trail, and I know that Fairgrounds is running races this weekend, but for all intent and purposes, those are at this point 3-year-old races. Meaningful 2-year-old races concluded last weekend with the Los Alamitos Futurity and also the Remington Springboard Mile. So now is a good time to look at the 2-year-olds for the Kentucky Derby, and we're going to rank our top 5 like we did last year with the Derby Power 5s. Some of this is based on overall talent and, viability on the Kentucky Derby Trail, but also accomplishments too, because there's a couple horses that were a little bit dubious on them in terms of talent towards the Kentucky Derby, but it's difficult to not have them in the places that we have them in. So I'm going to turn it over to Eric to start off this Power 5 with the number 5 horse for this race. So take it away.
At number 5, we'll go with Instant Coffee for Brad Cox, the winner of the Kentucky Jockey Club, a race that me and Jack are both very big fans of. We believe it has grade 1 caliber nearly every year and always is capable of producing at least a Derby starter, if not multiple. This year's edition, not very strong, but Instant Coffee, due to a mix of there's still a lot of talent and we don't really know who else would be a good number 5, finds himself at the bottom of our still, highly ranked list. It was a strong win, came from off the pace, won by a length and a quarter. But there's two things that do kind of stand out from that race. You question the quality of competition. It wasn't the greatest group. And by all metrics, the speed figures were atrocious. Equibase figures, if you use those, the only horse to not post a 90 or higher in the history of the race since they started keeping Equibase figures back in 1992. It was his worst career buyer in a winning victory, so only 2 out of 3 starts, but still regressed on time form. It was kind of an ugly race, but there was still a ton of talent that I think maybe supersedes that. He's 2 for 3. His only career loss came in a tough Breeders' Futurity that produced the Breeders' Cup Juvenile winner and maybe another horse or two on this list, point being it was a very strong race that he still ran a good 5th in, closing from far off the pace on top of all that. So there's plenty to like, but still plenty of questions to ask with Instant Coffee. He's still good, though, and he's still good enough to potentially find his way to the Kentucky Derby starting gate and good enough for 5 on our list.
And now we're going to move on to number 4 on our list, and that's a horse that you could very easily make a case to be 2 or definitely 3, but possibly even 2 on this race, and that's Arabian Night for Bob Baffert. Only a maiden winner at this point. That's the reason why we have him at 4, just because he doesn't have the resume as some of the other horses that will be in front of him on this list. But his maiden victory, super impressive. He aired by 7 lengths on the opening race of the Breeders' Cup Saturday card. Finished in front of Determinedly, who was a very strong next out winner in his subsequent start. And with Bob Baffert and horses on the Kentucky Derby Trail, that this horse will continue to progress further. There's not really a whole lot that I can say about him, at least in terms of what he did, and really, the discussion with him is where we ranked him compared to his stablemate, who's the number 3 horse. So I'll let Eric get into the number 3 horse, Cave Rock, and then also the reason why we placed Arabian Night versus where we placed Cave Rock on this list.
It's a very interesting discussion, no doubt. Arabian Night obviously was so good in his lone start, a very strong maiden win, but we put Cave Rock above because the resume still supersedes it all. He's still a dual grade 1 winner. He still looked like a world beater in those 3 runs, and even the Breeders' Cup Juvenile was a very admirable effort in defeat. He got stuck dueling with Hurricane J, who was a very big long shot in there. Coming out of a sprint race, he was going to have a lot of early gun, and while maybe the half mile and the 3/4 don't reflect it, Cave Rock got dragged out by this long shot, and it did just enough to soften him to lose to Forte. but he still only beat a length and a half, and he still boxed on really nicely, even when Forte passed him. So there's still a lot of quality in it, and he's definitely become a forgotten man in the month and a half or almost 2 months now since losing his first career loss in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. But the talent's still there. And with the overall composition of the West Coast 3-year-olds, or soon-to-be 3-year-olds, I should say, there's no reason he can't win a bunch of races out there. And, obviously the technicalities with the Baffert barn, but ultimately earn his way into the Kentucky Derby in one of those final preps. There's still plenty to like about Cave Rock. You shouldn't take one race to judge him for his overall body of work. And with that, number 2 on our list is Loggins, who was a very good second to Forte in the Breeders' Futurity. As I mentioned, some good overlapping form from that race. When we talked about instant coffee, Loggins, it was only his second career start. He's coming off a very strong maiden win at Churchill Downs that he romped in. Was not even close, was barely even asked by Roger, who won by 8.5. Comes into the Breeders' Futurity off that big effort, 3-2 favorite. Set a pace that was very brutal. Sub 23 opening quarter, 46.36 for the half mile. And he still withstood that to only lose by a neck to the future Breeders' Cup Juvenile winner in just his second career start. And that future Breeders' Cup Juvenile winner had also just won a Grade 1 prior. So, point being, to do all that in your second career start, obviously a ton to take away, not to mention 7 lengths clear of third. And then Brad Cox in the connection sat down and said, you know what? It'd be a lot to throw him into the Breeders' Cup Juvenile off of that effort. We're going to take a step back. We're going to freshen him up for a 3-year-old campaign. And he hasn't actually been worked back since that race. But don't look at that as a negative. Just know that there's a plan in motion now. It's a double-edged sword because this has happened before. Connections have said, we want nothing to do with the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. It's just not right for our horse. The time is not right. We need to prepare for a 3-year-old campaign. And then they realize you get to the 3-year-old campaign and everybody's caught up to you. I don't know. I'm going to wager that it's going to work out better for this one, though. I think Loggins, they're doing the right thing by the horse, not running him too much too early. He seemed like he was only getting better even with those 2 strong runs. He seems like he's easily on top of the class. So Loggins for sure deserving of number 2 on our list, and I think he's going to be a big factor once he gets back going and gets on the Derby trail.
And now we're going to move on to the last horse on this list, and of course it has to be Forte, the Breeders' Cup Juvenile winner. Now this is a horse I mentioned at the top of this video that there's a horse that we're a little bit dubious on, and that is Forte, because Forte has kind of been that horse on the trail this year that has been he's not going to move forward from this race. He won the Hopeful, now he's not going to win the Breeders' Futurity. And then after the Breeders' Futurity, now he's not going to win the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. And he's a horse that I've seen a lot of people, and I've kind of, maybe at points been on this train with him myself of saying, he's not a horse he's not a serious horse going forward on the Kentucky Derby trail. And that's still might be the case, but at the same time, this is a horse that's won 3 straight Grade 1s against some very good horses. You go back to the Hopeful. Blazing Sevens came back and ran a very strong race in the Champagne. We obviously had Loggins number 2 on this list. Now, maybe next year, or maybe just in terms of overall talent, Loggins was just a bit better than Forte. But Forte got the job done there, and Forte's been hanging with some of the best horses in this crop. You obviously have Cave Rock, we mentioned on this list. You go back to, I mentioned Blazing Sevens didn't quite make this list, but Blazing Sevens is a horse that's going to pick up points on the Kentucky Derby trail. And Instant Coffee, who was 3rd in the Breeders' Futurity, Forte was almost 7 lengths clear of him underneath in that race. So, and then there's other decent horses also on the Kentucky Derby trail that Forte's finished in front of. So, has to be number 1 right now because he's accomplished the most. 3 Grade 1 wins, obviously. He's going to be the 2-year-old champion. A little bit hesitant on him going forward because I could see the situation happen where the other horses catch up with him. But right now at this point, and accomplishments definitely do carry him to the top of this list, but you have to have Forte at the top of this list because it's very difficult to not at this point, given what he's put together on the racetrack. And with that being said, that's going to be it for this Kentucky Derby Power 5. We're not going to be doing these every week after Kentucky Derby prep races. We'll probably do one in January after the Lecompte and recap things from that point, and then maybe do one in March. So maybe about 3 or 4 more of these that we'll do in the run up into the Kentucky Derby on the Derby Trail, and then obviously come Derby Trail time, or come post all the preps, we will have our profiles, which we do for all 20 of the horses. We've done that the last 3.5 years, and we're going to do those again come 2023. So that's what we have ahead on the Kentucky Derby Trail. We'll see you next time on Racing Rundown. Be sure to check out episode number 190 and the previews that we'll have upcoming this weekend. Have a good one. We'll see you then.